True Uber Horror Stories. Story 1. My name is Samantha, but everyone calls me Sam. I'm 23 and live in a small town just outside of Austin, Texas. It's usually a quiet place, but I spend a lot of my time in the city with friends. After what happened last month, though, I'm more cautious than I've ever been. It was a Friday night, and I had gone out for dinner and drinks with my college friends. By the time we wrapped up, it was close to midnight. The streets were still busy, but I was exhausted and just wanted to get home. I said my goodbyes, opened my Uber app, and booked a ride. A black sedan popped up on the app with a driver named Tom. It said he'd arrive in 5 minutes. When the car pulled up, it looked similar to the one in the app, same make and model, but something felt off. I checked the license plate like I always do and noticed it didn't match the one in the app. The driver rolled down the window and said, "Samantha?" "Yeah, that's me," I replied hesitantly, still looking at the plate. "Don't worry about that," he said with a wave of his hand. "The app gets those details wrong sometimes. It's a glitch." He sounded calm and confident, but something about him made my skin crawl. He looked to be in his late 40s, with greasy hair and a slight smirk that didn't reach his eyes. I stood there for a second, debating. It was late, and I didn't want to deal with the hassle of canceling and waiting for another ride. Against my better judgment, I got in. As soon as I sat down, I texted my location and the car's description to my friend Mia. I wrote, "In case something's off, I'm in a black sedan. Not sure the plate matches, but I'll keep you updated." Mia texted back immediately, "Be careful. Call me when you're home." The car smelled faintly of cigarettes, and the seats were worn, not what I'd usually expect from an Uber. I tried to focus on my phone to avoid conversation, but the driver kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror. His eyes lingered too long, and his smile felt wrong, like he knew something I didn't. About 10 minutes into the ride, he took an unexpected turn down a dark, empty road. I leaned forward. "This isn't the way to my house." He chuckled. "Relax, it's just a shortcut. I know these streets better than the app." My stomach nodded, but I tried to stay calm. "Okay," I mumbled, gripping my phone tightly. We drove in silence for a few more minutes until he suddenly pulled into an old, abandoned gas station. The place was barely lit, with broken windows and weeds growing through the pavement. "Why are we stopping?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Need to check the tires," he said, opening his door. "Won't take a minute." He stepped out of the car, but instead of looking at the tires, he walked toward another man who was standing near the edge of the gas station. I hadn't seen him at first. He was partially hidden in the shadows. They started talking, and I could see them glancing back at the car, at me. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought it would burst. I knew I couldn't stay in the car. I quietly unlocked the door, praying they wouldn't hear it. Then, clutching my phone and bag, I opened the door just enough to slip out. The second I was out, I bolted. I didn't even know where I was running, but I spotted a small diner with its lights still on about 2 blocks away. My legs felt like jelly, but adrenaline pushed me forward. I burst into the diner, breathless and shaking. The few people inside turned to stare. A kind-looking waitress hurried over. "Are you okay?" "There's a man. He's not my Uber driver," I managed to say between gasps. She quickly locked the doors and called the police. When they arrived, I told them everything. The mismatched license plate, the stop at the gas station, the second man. They immediately put out a call to locate the car. The officers told me later that the car wasn't registered with Uber at all. The driver was using a fake account to pick up unsuspecting passengers. Worse, they found out he had a history of luring people into remote areas to rob them. Or worse. I was lucky I got away when I did. Since that night, I've been extra careful. I double-check everything before getting into any car, and I always share my ride details with someone I trust. But the memory still haunts me. The way he looked at me through the rearview mirror, the feeling of being watched at the gas station, and the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't run. It's a reminder that sometimes your gut knows before you do, and listening to it can save your life. My name is Mark and I'm 28 years old. I live in a busy part of Chicago where Ubers and taxis are the easiest way to get around, especially late at night. I've always been cautious, but not overly paranoid, at least not until this happened. Now, I don't get into a car without triple checking everything. It all started one Friday night. I'd gone out for drinks with a few coworkers to celebrate finishing a big project. The night ran later than I expected, and by the time I said goodbye, it was well past midnight. The streets were quiet, and the train station was too far for me to feel comfortable walking alone. I opened the Uber app and booked a ride. Within seconds, a car was assigned, a black sedan driven by someone named David. The app said he'd arrive in 3 minutes. When the car pulled up, it matched the description perfectly. Black sedan, clean exterior. The driver rolled down the window and said, "Mark?" "Yeah, that's me," I replied, climbing in. At first, everything seemed normal. The driver was friendly, but not overly chatty. The car smelled faintly of air freshener, and soft music played on the radio. I was scrolling through my phone, not paying much attention to the route, when the driver suddenly said, "Hey, the main road ahead is blocked. I know a shortcut that'll get us around it." "Okay, sure," I said without thinking, but a few minutes later I realized something was off. Instead of turning onto a side street, he drove past it and headed toward a dark, unlit road. The pavement soon turned to gravel and then dirt. I could barely see anything outside except for trees lining both sides of the path. This doesn't look like a shortcut," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry about it. The highway's just up ahead. This is faster." My gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I glanced at the door handle and realized the child lock was on. I couldn't open the door from the inside. My heart started racing. "Why are we on a dirt road?" I pressed, my voice more insistent now. He sighed, like I was annoying him. "I told you, the main road's blocked. Relax, man." I wasn't relaxing. My mind was racing. I discreetly unlocked my phone and dialed 911, leaving the line open. I placed the phone face down on my lap, praying the operator could hear the conversation and track my location. The driver kept driving, and the road seemed to stretch on forever. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, but I tried not to let it show. "You know what? I just remembered I left something at the bar. Can you turn around and take me back?" "No can do," he said flatly. "We're almost there." Almost where? I started looking for anything I could use to defend myself. My keys, too small. A water bottle, useless. The car's interior was spotless. No sign of anything I could grab. Then I noticed something in the distance, the flashing red and blue lights. My heart leapt. The driver saw it too and muttered, "Shit," under his breath. He slowed the car, but it was too late. A police cruiser was blocking the road ahead, and 2 officers were already out of their vehicle, shining flashlights in our direction. One of them signaled for the driver to stop and roll down the window. "What's going on here?" the officer asked, his tone sharp. Before the driver could respond, I blurted out, "I'm his passenger. He said we were taking a shortcut, but he won't let me out, and I don't feel safe." The officer's expression hardened. "Step out of the car," he ordered the driver. For a second, I thought he might try to speed off, but instead, he unlocked the doors and stepped out, hands raised. The officers separated us, and one of them walked me to the police car, while the other questioned the driver. "You did the right thing calling 911, the officer told me after I explained everything. "This guy's been on our radar. Turns out he's using a fake ID to drive for Uber." Later, I found out the driver had a criminal record, including charges for attempted kidnapping. He'd somehow slipped through the background check by using a fake identity. Uber deactivated his account immediately, but the damage was already done. That night still haunts me. What if I hadn't called 911? What if the police hadn't shown up when they did? I don't like to think about it. Now I'm hyper vigilant whenever I use a rideshare service. I double check the license plate, ask the driver for their name, and even share my trip details with a friend. It might seem paranoid, but after that night I've learned it's better to be safe than sorry. My name is Jay, and I'm 32 years old. I live in a mid-sized town in Ohio where I work a full-time job during the week and drive for Uber on weekends to make some extra cash. I've had my fair share of odd passengers, but one ride I gave last month still sends chills down my spine. It was a Saturday night, and I've been driving for a few hours. Most of my trips have been typical: groups of friends heading to bars, couples going home. Around 11:30 p.m., I got a request to pick up someone named Brian outside a diner on the edge of town. When I pulled up, the man who approached my car looked ordinary enough. Mid-40s, scruffy beard, wearing a faded hoodie. But as soon as he got in, I felt uneasy. There was something about his eyes. They seemed restless, constantly darting around, like he was looking for something or someone. "Hey," he said, flashing a quick smile. "You're Jay, right?" "Yeah, that's me," I replied. "Where are we heading?" He gave me an address that was about 20 minutes away, but his voice had a strange edge to it, like he was holding something back. As I started driving, Brian began asking me questions. At first, they seemed innocent: how long I'd been driving for Uber, if I enjoyed it. But then, they got personal. "Do you live alone?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. No," I lied. "I live with my brother." He nodded, but didn't say anything for a while. I tried to focus on the road, but I could feel his eyes on me, like he was studying me. About 10 minutes into the ride, Brian leaned forward and said, "You're gonna want to take the next right?" I glanced at my GPS, confused. "That's not what the app says. It's telling me to stay on this road." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, but trust me, this way's faster." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I hesitated, then pretended to tap my phone. "Huh, looks like my GPS is acting up," I said. "I'm just gonna stick to the main route to be safe." Brian didn't argue, but I could feel the tension in the air. He sat back, but his fingers drummed against his knee, and he kept glancing out the window. A few minutes later, he said, "Actually, pull over up here. I need to make a quick stop." I looked around. We were on a dark, empty stretch of road with no houses or businesses in sight. My heart was pounding now, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Sorry, man, I can't stop here. Uber policy, you know? Gotta take you straight to your destination." Brian didn't respond. He just stared at me through the rear-view mirror, his eyes cold and unreadable. That's when I made a split-second decision. Up ahead, I saw a gas station with bright lights and a few cars parked outside. "Actually, I need to stop for directions," I said, faking a laugh. "I think my GPS is completely fried." Before Brian could protest, I pulled into the gas station and parked near the entrance. "Be right back," I said, unlocking the doors. To my shock, Brian suddenly opened his door, muttered, "Forget it," and walked off into the darkness. I sat there for a moment, stunned. Before hurrying inside the gas station, I told the cashier what had happened and called the non-emergency police line to report the incident. The next morning, I was scrolling through the news when I saw Brian's face on the front page. My stomach dropped. The article said he had escaped police custody the night before and was linked to several violent assaults in the area. He'd been picked up earlier that evening, but somehow slipped away during transport. I couldn't believe it. If I hadn't trusted my gut and stopped at that gas station, I might not be here to tell this story. Now every time I pick up a passenger, I'm on edge. I've learned to trust my instincts because you never know who's getting into your car or what their intentions might be.